Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the DevOps Online Summit Patterns and Anti-Patterns track. And today we have Rosalind Radcliffe. And Rosalind and I met several years ago at DevOps Enterprise Summit. My fondest memory is when I said something mean about mainframes, and she just shredded me. And so it's so fun to have conversations with Rosalind. Rosalind, welcome to the summit, and thank you so much for talking. And what are you going to talk to us about? Probably not mainframes.
Thank you. And I'm happy to be here. And of course, I'm going to talk about mainframes. And I don't mean to shred anyone. I just want to make it clear that mainframes can do more than any other platform. I'll be as biased as I can be in that sense. So I really do want to talk about the misperceptions of IBM Z and the mainframe about what it can do and what it can't do, especially around modern DevOps practices, modern ways of working, and maybe help break down some of those misperceptions about you can't with the mainframe.
I'm looking forward to it. Mm-hmm. So, why do you think that change is so much harder for traditional mainframe developers than it is for us in the not mainframe world?
For all those of you in a not mainframe world who've been doing development for the last 30 years, things have changed. You've adopted new tools, you've adopted new languages. Things have been changing. They've been transforming. When I walk into some mainframe shops still, the development process looks exactly the same way as it did when I started in IBM 33 years ago. They're doing the same way of working. They're using the same tools. They're working on the same application in the same language. Now, there's nothing necessarily wrong with the same language and the same application, but all the rest of those sentences mean they haven't done anything new, which means how do you get somebody who's done something for 33 years or longer the exact same way to change? That's why it's so hard. They're just so used to it. Their muscle memory for hitting those keys to use ISPF is just there. It's what they've always done. And so change is hard. And change is hard, but when you've done it the same way for that long, it's really hard. And a lot of these people are kind of nearing retirement, and maybe they want to move on to retirement and not learn something new. And so we also have that challenge.
Honestly, I have that challenge too with not mainframe people who've been doing it for the same way for a while. What approaches would you recommend for helping to move the needle there?
We really have to get people to understand why, what's the value to them for changing. And not that this is specific to mainframe people either, but if people understand why they're having to change, what's the value in it for them and the organization, then they're much more likely to change. When you think about traditional mainframe development, I wrote my code, I compiled it, I might run it, and then I turn it over to the test team and they do everything else for me. In this new world, I've got a lot more to do. I have to write a unit test. I have to actually test my code to make sure it does. This is a lot more work. But think about it. The old way, I wrote my code, I turned it over. A few weeks later, I got a defect sent to me. Okay, now I got to go back to the code, figure out what on earth it did, figure out what on earth I did, and then make a fix. That's harder than just doing the right thing in the first place. What are the ways we can make them understand that this is better and more effective and won't cause them rework and what are the things that help them understand the value? And more we can explain the value to the transformation, the better off we are.
Have you found it? Because I find the same thing, and I'm always trying to find that thing that's valuable to them. And sometimes it's changes from developer to developer. What are some of the things that you found to really express that value to them that makes them say, oh, okay, maybe I want to try this?
One thing is by getting a partnership with someone else. So trying to help partner them with someone who's either younger and or more experienced with other platforms, getting them to share their knowledge about the application. So the trigger is you're teaching this new person about all the things you've done all these years. There's among many developers, the stuff they've built is precious to them. I mean, it's theirs. They've built this. It's valuable. It runs the organization, and they want people to understand that. And so to get them to understand they're sharing this knowledge of the business and of the application to this next group. And at the same time, that other group's going to teach them all these new ways of working. It works really well to do that kind of partner, and that gives them a why, and it helps you give some training and learning and some of that. The other thing is to help them understand that, you won't have to spend the weekend on the bridge call if we've entirely automated this process. You can have your weekend back. You may not have to answer that page because there won't be a problem in the deployment process. All of those kinds of things that give them, that appreciate them and give them more time back are things that may help. But as you said, everybody's different. You have to figure out what is the trigger for that set of people or that individual.
No, I agree. Actually, I spend a lot of time sharing my post-traumatic stress disorder with pagers going off as why you should do continuous delivery, that you should deploy more often and sleep more often.
Absolutely true.
Yeah, just so much pain. So how do you get a mainframe team started? I mean, how, and even beyond that, a follow-up is how would that be different from how you get a team that's doing Java or JavaScript getting started?
In some ways, it's probably exactly the same thought process to get the teams started. The problem is the mainframe guys are probably farther behind. For example, the tools that they're using don't support all the modern CI/CD processes. They really do limit them. It's harder to do parallel development. It's much harder to do parallel development. And so you have to look at how they're doing work today. And we do value stream assessments. I would recommend doing a value stream walkthrough, which is what I do anywhere. But in the mainframe space, you'll be surprised at the even more handoffs, the even more tickets, the even more, I can't do that without somebody else that will appear in the process. You'll also notice there's probably very little automated testing. There's probably no code coverage reports. There may be no code quality scanning currently available. All of those things aren't there in the process. So it's understand the process, understand how they do it, and find the biggest problem. In many cases, it's automated testing. But if I'm going to bring in automated testing, how do I store those test artifacts? They don't store in the existing system. So I've got to put them somewhere else. So maybe I need to fix the source code manager so it can handle test artifacts and my source code, and it can be consistent. So it does depend on the client, but the value stream, I think looking at that value stream, understanding all the pieces and looking at the biggest actual problem helps a lot. Another place that may be the biggest problem is actually deployment. I wasn't joking when I said bridge calls for a weekend. A lot of deployment in the mainframe space is still manual. And you go in and you run a job in the production system to make the change. You go in and maybe the source code load module, that kind of thing, the load module itself flows, but all the kicks changes or DB2 changes or system changes, all of those are somebody does them on the weekend, and they all have to be done in the right order. And it's a nice big spreadsheet of 100,000 items. So maybe automated deployment is the biggest area to fix first. It depends.
Well, and so there's a couple things there. I mean, one, I totally agree that, there's so many ahas that come up when you go and value stream a team and you show them what their flow looks like. It's just that idea that they don't know the pain. They've been living in the pain for so long. And then all you have to do is expose the pain to them and say, she pain. And then suddenly they become intolerant of that pain. But then I was hearing some things that sound like there's a lot of tooling challenges. How hard is it for people who are in the mainframe world to overcome some of those tooling challenges?
Actually, it's not hard. Just move to a modern tool chain. I mean, just get out of that. Normally, I don't say get out of a tool or get out of a whatever, because there's probably, there's lots of good applications that have written in the mainframe that have worked for the last 40 years. But in this case, many of these systems were designed for a waterfall development methodology. It's all around this hierarchy of, I'm going to have a dev environment, then I'm going to go to a test environment, and then I'm going to go to a pre-prod, and then I'm going to go to prod. And I have a flow that I'm going to take, and it's going to be based on a date when I move forward, and it's a release schedule. And I can't move into the next environment to get testing until the right time, nothing to do with when my code's ready. So all this gets in the way. One of the common things is it's really hard to do parallel development. These legacy systems lock the source code. So if I check it out, it's mine. No one else can change it at the same time. Yes, there are ways to override that, but then I have to do a manual merge to bring them together. And I have to remember not to overwrite their code. So there's just a lot of challenge in that space. And it only does source code. So the other things around the system, all the infrastructure changes, all those things don't go in that same flow. They're somewhere else. Well, they're probably manual. So getting into a new tool, and customers are moving into Git, any flavor of Git, take your choice. And those that move into a modern SCM and a modern CI/CD pipeline, take your choice, GitLab, Jenkins, Azure DevOps, don't care, whatever it is, you can move. And it's actually not that hard to move. The hardest part is people learning the new ways of working, but many people have done it. And so their practice is to do it. Their practice is to move. Then getting people to do this new way of working when they've never worked that way, these new tools, that's the biggest problem, getting people to understand. One of the questions I get is, what do you mean someone else can edit my file?
Well, I've had this conversation, so I would go and talk to teams about continuous delivery and how it makes their lives better, and then talk about some of the processes required, and I'd be told, well, no, we can only have one person editing a file at a time. And I'm like, but I haven't had to do that since like the 90s. So is it just ignorance of that the tools exist, or is it just we just don't want to use the tools? You see both? I mean, what is it?
The existing mainframe tools, library managers, were designed specifically not to allow people to have two people editing a file at once. I mean, that's their basic premise. You have to go outside the system to do that. So that's how those tools were designed. They were production control tools. They were there to lock things down. They were there to control. That's what they were designed for. Out of those tools into a modern SCM that really handles versioning properly, that really can let you do this parallel development, that provides a merge function so I can merge two files without using Super C. their advantages. Now, I'm picking on the tools. They worked really well for when they came out in the 1980s. In the mainframe, we had a central source code manager in the 1980s. Distributed teams couldn't say that. Many of them had their source code in their, whatever. We had one build process. There's only one build process. It was consistent. So there was value that came in the mainframe long before the distributed world figured this out. But they just kind of stayed there in that way and didn't move forward like other tools did.
So why do you think there's so much pushback? I mean, we've already talked about, someone's like, I'm used to working this way, but what other kinds of pushback do you see? And when the value is absolutely, at least I hope, clear, the value is clear in other platforms that we can get better lives by working this way.
The value is clear if you understand the value, but if you see the mainframe or IBM Z as the machine it was in the 1980s, if you see it as this is the way it's always done, the mainframe is different. It has to be different because it's special and it is better. Okay, I got that. It is special, but it's not because of the development processes or the operations processes. It's got a special hardware system. It's got a special operating system that gives you value. Yes, but that doesn't mean the processes and practices have to be this way. It really has to do with this thought process of the mainframe is always different versus, yes, it has a set of qualities of service, but that doesn't mean it has to be different all the time. Let's look at what are the best practices everywhere else and use them for Z as well.
Honestly, it's everybody's special and different has been my experience, and my opinion has come to be that nobody's special and different. It's just a technical problem. Let's just solve it. You should be able to live a better life. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
I think that is true. I think we need to recognize that different systems provide different capabilities for us. If I want to be able to spin up lots of things, lots of small things and get them close to the user or get them all over the world, maybe I want to spin them up in OpenShift and containers in a cloud. If I want high performance transaction processing, I want to put it on a mainframe because it does that really well. If I want to centralize data, there are system kind of characteristics. So there are hardware characteristics that matter. But that's not application development process. That's not tooling. That's not any of those kinds of things. All of those things they don't need to be special based on the system I'm going to. And the more common we can make all of that, the easier it is for people, no matter what platform they're used to work on that other platform or to do something on that other platform or to build something that maybe I want to run it on one system today, and tomorrow I realize, no, I need it to grow bigger. I need always consistent data. Okay, I'm going to put it over here instead. And I can move my work that way. If I don't think of it, I have to build it differently just because it runs here or runs here. That's why Linux and containers are so popular. Let's make the process, let's make everything same so I can run it where I want to run it in the end at the right location. So we need to, let's remove those differences that don't need to be there and focus on the value of the system.
Yeah, I agree. One of the reasons I'm so passionate about helping people with this and have been ever since I understood this pain was not what it was supposed to be, is just that it makes our lives better as developers, that it's just a better way of living, not just working, especially pager. Where have you seen like success stories where teams have just had their lives transformed? Because I've seen that on teams that I've been able to work with, and lives just been transformed on mainframe. And where can we get more of those stories so we can just change the industry?
So there are some stories. It's amazing that many of the customers don't want to share them, partially because they see them as competitive advantage, partially because they see them as, yeah, I don't know what. Maybe it was too bad before. Maybe we shouldn't talk about it. I don't know what the reason for not sharing, but I have seen examples of things I like the most, of a 36-hour bridge call on a weekend down to an automated deployment process that no one has to call in for. You kind of think about that and you go, every other weekend I'm always in here. And now if something does go wrong, I might, but I haven't gotten a page in a month and a half or whatever. I mean, that kind of thing is huge transformation. Or some of the other ones I like, the automated deployment of the infrastructure. So as a developer, I can now spin up my own environment and I can do my testing without having to wait 2 weeks for the system programmer to do something for me. I can actually do it now, really, right now. That kind of thing, I'm seeing teams and the reaction, it gets them back that light that I used to see when I started, because we did things a little differently, but I see in other places that I can experiment now, I can do things, but it's a combination of things and it takes a while for that to happen. I think a lot of the things that we all talk about as part of the DevOps Enterprise Summit and such, about work in progress and not loading people down, the discussion that I've seen about SAFe or Kanban or Scrum or whatever, all those processes, can we just focus on having team productivity and maybe not all the ceremony, kind of things? All of those things are what make the teams work well together. And that's what I like to see. And I've seen many teams come together and be much happier with this process. The other thing, it's fun to see them when they can do their unit testing and get that feedback without having to ask someone else. I can actually run my code. I can test it. I can get that fast information, especially when they're younger and they're less confident in the Z platform. Mm-hmm. But I can do it. I can do it myself. I can get that fast feedback and then I can deploy into another environment and I don't have to worry about breaking anyone else. I've seen that as well. And it's fun.
It is fun. I'll say that for me and for the team that we first started doing CD with, that it made us love development again. And we stood up on stage and said that it just made us love development again. It's just fun. What are some of the pitfalls you see teams fall into?
Trying to do it the old way in the new tools. So some organizations have decided they're going to move, but they haven't necessarily provided that help to the teams as much as they should. And so they're trying to do it the old way. I mean, I want to do it my old way. I do it my old way. And it's really actually hard to do it the old way in new tools. They kind of get in the way. It doesn't work. That's one of the problems. Other problems are trying to do it the new way, but not providing enough capacity or environments. So I've got my new nice pipeline. I can do things really fast, but I'm stuck because I don't have an environment to test in. Actually, it's fully automated, but I don't have an environment because I haven't gotten to the spin up, spin down kind of environment thought process. And so I can get fast. No, I can't get faster. I still have to wait.
That's frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this honestly, this has been educational for me. I've always been told by my mainframe colleagues that they just can't do it that way, and that always made me sad. Nearly broke my heart that they couldn't live like I was living. And so it's encouraging to know that that's not true. That every developer can have a better life. I think we just all need to keep telling them that life can be better.
we just have to be clear that life can be better, that there really is a light at the end of the tunnel. If when I started 33 years ago, I would have thought I was doing development exactly the same way, I wouldn't have stayed in development. That gone. The idea that things change, that things transform. And I think the other thing is this continuous learning culture that has come out. The idea that we really do need to continuously learn, and this focus on learning and improving and evolving. I mean, one of the funny stories that's not funny, but funny stories that I have with some mainframe transitions is they really are used to an ISPF screen with a set of function keys. And they get really good and really fast. And I started in ISPF development, so I'm not really picking on ISPF developers. And the editor actually is, if you know it really well, it's a really good system. I mean, just like people like VI, people can like ISPF. I love VI. Problem with that. Yeah. Well, VI serves its purpose. My fingers can do VI. I got it. I'm not sure I can tell anyone else how to do it. But so I understand that. But we were getting a set of complaints about it's too many clicks, because they actually had to use a mouse to do something, and it's too many clicks. So I actually went through and counted function keys versus clicks. And it was actually more function keys that you had to press. But because it was a click, it was bad. And I'm sitting here going, okay, I know that you don't use ISPF in your daily world. I know that you probably have an iPhone. You probably do Facebook with your grandchildren. Take that brain, all of the learning and all the things that you've done outside of work, because I know you love technology. Bring that in to your day job and think about all the value that you can now do if you weren't tied down to the old ways of working. What if you could make the database change yourself? You don't have to wait for that ticket to get that ticket. And think about all these things you could do. This transformation is what I really want everybody to see. And I don't care if you're mainframe developer or distributed developer. I hope everybody gets this new ways of working and better way of working, because there's some non-mainframe people that are also stuck in the 1980s in development practices. So yeah, everybody needs to move forward.
We share that desire. So any final words of advice for people who may not have started this journey yet?
The first thing is, don't assume you can't do it. Look at what's going on, understand what else is out there, learn about the new capabilities, the new things coming on in the world. Think about, if I could only do, what if I could experiment? Don't be limited by what you used to think. Look out at all the latest things. If you want to use Red Hat Code Ready workspaces for doing ZOS development, you can get VS Code and have a COBOL editor. You don't have to be limited by what you thought was there before. And look at all of the options that are available today to make what you're doing better. And for all my mainframe friends out there, think about the value that platform gives you and start telling the rest of the world the good parts instead of the it's different and it's slow. If you think about that application that you build in Kix, you've got that transactional system. You've got that ability to build a system without having to do all this extra work to deal with unreliable hardware and unreliable systems. There's two-phase commit. There are all sorts of functions that you have in the system for you that you can talk about all the good stuff about this platform. The fact that you don't have to do a lot of things other platforms have to do, and the system provides it for you. Your system is up 24/7. And you don't have to worry about it going down in the same way. You can have a continuous rollout that rolls out the environment without ever being down. There are lots of values in the system. Think about those and don't focus on, I have to do it differently because I happen to run on a mainframe. And think about IBM Z as the new machine it is, not the machine from the 1980s when we used punch cards.
But you've just taken away all of the excitement of resiliency engineering and waking up in the middle of the night because the hardware went down.
Well, so I'm sorry, but if I can run on a machine that's 7 nines, and I can run on an operating system that's designed to allow you to roll so you can stay up, so that you can have your data always available, so you can roll your updates to the system so you don't have to go down. Why would I want to have to do all that work in my own code? I'm sorry. A lot of people spend a lot of time to make that work. I'm going to take advantage of that.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much, Rosalind. It's been great. Where can people reach out to you if they have more questions about this?
Anybody can find me. I'm probably findable just about everywhere, but at Rosalind Rad on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, and my email is unbelievably findable, but rradclif@us.ibm.com. And I'm happy to answer whatever questions and however you contact me, because it is important to understand to use the mainframe for what it should be used for and what it can be used. And we all have a better developer experience.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Rosalind.
Thank you.